We state our views freely and fully without fear. We treat people who disagree with us with honesty, dignity, and respect. We welcome opportunities to engage those with whom we disagree. We believe all of us have blind spots and none of us are not worth talking to. We seek to disagree accurately, avoiding exaggeration and stereotypes. We look for common ground where it exists, and if possible, find ways to work together. We believe that in disagreements, both sides share and learn. In Braver Angels, neither side is teaching the other or giving feedback on how to think or say things differently. And that is the Braver Angels way.
Thank you so much, Natalie. We will give her a round of applause. This is how we do it on Zoom with the jazz hands. So feel free to do that for our speakers tonight, especially if you like what they're saying. So without further ado, the resolution on the table tonight is resolved, close the border. Resolved, close the border. With that, I call this debate to order, and I am looking for a first speech in the affirmative. Do we have Teresa? Teresa, are you prepared to speak?
Hey there, I sure am.
All right, Teresa.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, please. The floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Teresa McPhail. I am speaking to you from Colorado. I've lived here in Colorado for about 30 years with my husband and 2 adult children. I'm a first-generation American. My father immigrated from Scotland in 1961. My mom immigrated from Newfoundland to Toronto in 1960. They met and married in Toronto on a Friday, as I recall, and on Monday they were in California. They had applied through the consulate there in Toronto for work visas and were allowed to come in. They did, however, have blood tests, fingerprinting, x-rays, educational experience was mandated. And they also had to sign a document swearing off any public assistance for the first 5 years. No food stamps, no Medicaid, nothing. From 1989 to 1997, I had the opportunity to live and work in 4 different countries. I was not associated with the military. The UK, Switzerland, Australia, and South Africa, and all of those countries had extremely tight borders. They had tight control of the folks coming in and out of their country. All of them, except for South Africa, mandated that incoming migrants and workers provide their own health insurance. Fast forward to 1997. I got married while living in Switzerland, and my then husband applied for a green card. He was subjected to the same amount of medical exams, blood tests, chest x-rays, urine tests, fingerprinting, and on approval of getting his green card, he too had to swear off public assistance for the first 5 years. Now, down the road, Denver, Colorado has a population of 700,000 people. And since late 2022, we've received 40,000 additional migrants who have no documentation, no money, no civic records or educational records, and plenty of illness, unfortunately. In December alone, 144 buses arrived, bringing us between 100 and 200 people a day. Denver has received more migrants per capita than any other city in the US, according to the Denver Gazette. The mayor of Denver, Mike Johnson, has asked his city council to cut 10 to 15% of their budget to pay for the onslaught of illegal migrants being bused into the city. The children on these buses are being taken to our public schools, which are slowly overwhelmed with the need to provide free breakfast, free lunch, and of course, school supplies. While Colorado's children have to provide their vaccination records to the school of their choice, the migrant children do not. The taxpayers in Colorado simply can't support the dramatic increase in the need for welfare assistance. And when a city like Denver announces budget cuts to that extent, it means an inevitable cut to police, firefighters, and medical services funded by the city. Without a border, we are no longer a country, in my opinion. And I'm beginning to wonder if that's the goal of the current administration. My house has a door. I can open it and I can shut it as I like to. Why not create the same thing for our southern border?
Thank you, Teresa. So we will now I would like to raise your hand if you would like to ask a question of curiosity or clarification for Teresa. Grace.
Madam Chair, I am wondering whether there has been an uptick in illnesses in the community related to the increase in migrants, or what the concern is with the medical screenings spoken to by the...
Madam Speaker?
Yes, so we have had a couple of measles cases that's being reported amongst the migrants coming in, specifically the children coming into the school district. I don't know how many, but that's the one case, the one illness that we're hearing the most about.
Additional questions for our speaker. Please raise your Zoom hand. Bill Carter.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Madam, I'd like kind of a two-part question. One, I think there is a word in our resolution that may be a little hyperbolic, the word close. I liked what the speaker was talking about with laws that have been in place, restrictions, requirements. So enforcing those does not necessarily mean close the border. So the first part, I'd like the speaker's thoughts on using the word close, which to me seems a little harsh, but I'd also like to ask the speaker their thoughts on if this is a new problem with our current or recent administration at the federal level being accountable for it, or if they believe it is also a pervasive problem that has, built up for an extended period. Kind of who's to blame and for how long, I guess it would be the question.
Sure. So on the wording of the resolution and the responsibility. Madam Speaker.
Thank you for that question. That's a good one. Yeah, I wondered when I saw close the border, it does kind of make you think of closing the door and that's it, which was never my family's experience. It's always kind of been a door with a handle, or you have to knock kind of thing, paperwork and things that have to be addressed first. I think my family's experience and my personal experience has been that there's a legal means to do it. But the news here, at least, and the volunteers that are trying to help the migrants come in are hearing that most of them are coming in for economic reasons, economic problems in their home country. Regarding, when, I think the question was, when did this really start to become a huge problem? My own personal experience is that it's just become a problem now with the southern border here in Colorado. I don't have any personal experience about immigration being a problem prior to, I would say, maybe the last 3 or 4 years.
Thank you. And now I will take one final question. Charlie.
Madam Speaker, Teresa referred to the current administration. I'm wondering if she's familiar with the last border deal that was negotiated on a bipartisan basis with very conservative Republican senators that allowed the President of the that if it were passed, it would give the President of the United States the authority to actually close the border. And Joe Biden said he would close the border. When Donald Trump found out about this, he got on the phone to the Republicans and said, squash this deal now. I do not want Joe Biden to have a win on the border. I want to campaign on the border.
For our
And,
speaker.
and so the Republican, to finish my statement, sorry, the Republicans now have backtracked and said, oh, we are not going to, we're gonna, this crisis that we've been talking about now can wait for another.
We bring this to a specific question. You're
Yeah, is
asking
she familiar with this? Is
Yes.
she familiar with this?
Is she familiar with this? Thank you. For our speaker.
Yes, I haven't heard, I haven't read the bill. I did hear that it got squashed, but it's always been my understanding that immigration is a federal issue, and that the control of our borders is a federal issue, and that the president, whoever he or she may be, maybe one day there'll be a she, they have it within their purview to close the border at any time. So I'm not sure why President Biden or any president needs the permission of Congress to close the border.
Thank you to our speaker and all of our questioners. With that, I am looking for a first speech in the negative. Do we have Helena?
Yes. Coincidentally, or I went to a training of a nonprofit earlier today, and I wasn't aware before I went that the speaker was a native person. I'm in Northern California, and we have a large Pomo community here, and really talking about the current impact on tribal nations from losing their original status as a person living in this country. And it was just interesting. I feel that one of the main reasons that the United States is such a leading country, such an incredible country, such a country that has so much invention and creativity and spirit and just so much that is the best of what humans can accomplish on Earth, is because we have such a diverse population. People from, I read hundreds of countries. When you break it all down, we have larger groups that we list as immigrants, but individually, the countries from around the world of people who are citizens who have grown this country. So I'm hesitant to just close the border because who knows, the cure to cancer may come in next month if we were letting that person in. So the talent and the potential, I think, is there from around the world. So I don't like to close it. At the same time, I am in a very small community in Northern California. We have 5,000 people. I cannot imagine how we would deal with an influx of just 5,000 more people who needed services, who needed help. We have probably several thousand fishermen that come up regularly, but that's a really different experience. And so I really, feel for the cities and the border areas where you're suddenly trying to help and accomplish some sort of resolution of some sort of place to live and services for people who are in a lot of pain, who are coming with very few resources. And I can understand that that can be really difficult. My reason for being opposed to the resolution is I feel that part of being such a great country overall is I think we can and should resolve sharing this burden at the border. And it shouldn't just be Colorado, it shouldn't just be Texas, it shouldn't just be Florida or California that has a large number of immigrants coming in and needing to absorb, that we need to be having a system where literally around the country we are able to accommodate immigrants as they come in. I do agree that we need to do some health screening or some health services before people go to all different communities. But I feel that we are such an incredible open country, and it is our freedom and our belief in freedom that is attracting people, as well as the economics and safety and things like that. So that's where I sit and why I don't want to just close the border. Thank you.
Thank you to our speaker. I will now take questions for our speaker. A dead learner, please unmute and ask your question.
Yeah, I have a question. Do we have a policy that we get only immigrants from America, but people from Africa and China, which is billions of people, cannot come to this country? That means we kind of segregate American, yes, but European and African not, or Asian not. That means what is the concept? Who will come and who will not come?
Thank you very much for that question for our speaker.
I'll be totally honest, I am not up on all of what the limitations are from different countries and what those specifics are. So I can't answer that. I know we do have them, and I don't know what the rationales are.
So you want action before you know what you are doing?
No, we'll just thank you. That's we'll move on to our next question now. Debbie Silverman.
I agree, Madam Chair. I agree with the speaker's statement about all the creativity that comes out of the diversity. But I guess I'd like a clarification, not necessarily from the speaker, I don't know from where. We're talking about closing the border, but should we clarify closing it to illegal aliens? Because if we have a system that allows people in legally, we'll get that diversity. But the United States shouldn't be paying to support all these foreigners when we have homeless people in our own communities.
I encourage all in the audience to consider the resolution as our questioner has put forward, and for you to put out your own thoughts. But for this question for our specific speaker on the floor right now, would you care to answer?
I guess I don't know that the selection process would necessarily cover all of the talent that could come in. It's as humans, we all have our biases, and our agencies and our organizations have them. And I've often said, just within the prisons, the cure to cancer could be there. So the illegal, legal, I would still think we should stay open.
And a final question for our speaker from Karen Kaufman.
Actually, this is not Karen, this is David Kaufman, so thank you. Madam Chair, most of the data suggests that migrants actually contribute more to the economy than they drain. And similarly, that growth in the GDP, which is basically a measure of our standard of living, comes from growth in population. And that we need on average about 3 million immigrants a year in order to at least sustain that, probably more in order to grow. Countries like China and Japan have net zero immigration.
You sound like you have a speech. Would you like to?
My question then to our speaker is the problem with an open border not that we are letting people in, but rather how we are processing them?
Thank you for this question. To our speaker.
I would agree with that we do need to process more effectively. We need to spread the wealth, and I'll say wealth because it's human beings throughout the United States. I'm in California. In high school, we didn't all sign up to go pick vegetables in the fields. If there are not people coming to California to pick vegetables, then a large part of this country won't be eating. So I would agree with the questioner that it is the process. We need a lot of work with that, and how we allocate the resources of people coming in throughout the country.
With that, our speaker is thanked.
Thank you.
Moving on, we are looking for, well, actually, I have a couple announcements. First of all, as a reminder, please make sure you're muted when you aren't speaking or asking a question. And then my whips are informing me that we are looking in particular We're looking in general for speeches. Please don't be shy as you listen to our speakers. If something spurs you and you just want to think it out with us, go ahead and chat to one of our whips. Get on the docket. We look forward to hearing from you. We are looking especially for speakers in the negative. And don't feel constrained if you don't have to interpret it, you know, as totally black and white. But if you lean toward the negative, go ahead and speak in the negative. So go ahead, chat to some of our whips. Really want to hear from you. For now, we are looking for our another speech in the affirmative. Do we have David Pellegrinelli?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Madam Chair.
David.
And much appreciated to the comments from Teresa and Helena. Those are very good. I'm talking to you today from the state of Oregon in the US. My intention is to advocate for having a border that is more closed than now. Not necessarily totally closed, but much more closed than now. And the reason why is because I believe that an open border has 4 or 5 negative side effects that are often overlooked. And these side effects are supportive of being more compassionate and considerate, which is a lot of times the reason why advocates of an open border want to be compassionate to the migrants. I believe that it's much more compassionate to export improvement solutions to the other countries, not import the people here. It's much cheaper, easier, and better for the citizens to help them live in their home country peacefully and securely. Here's what happens if we continue not to do that. The sender's countries' remaining citizens suffer more. The most marginalized people in that country that have to stay because they have no money or security to migrate. We look at the ones that come here as being the ones who are marginalized because we're comparing them to our own citizens in terms of how much they're suffering. The ones who come here are among the more privileged in the country. They're not rich, they're not well off, but they're usually the ones that have more freedom to move. The real desperate ones have to stay with no remaining buffer or stronger people to help dilute their power structure that made the country bad. The receiver's country, current citizens also suffer. Just ask them. The education, inflation, budgets, all the things that we hear. We don't have to go into that because there's opinions about that already. But even things like corporate profits, inequality also suffer with unfettered immigration. Some people might feel good in the short run about helping the poor people from other countries, but even these altruistic intentions will be offset by losses here and sacrifices that we'll all have to endure later. The problem is when we endure those later, we won't even connect them back to the true cause, which was that immigration that happened before. Some people do see these downsides and want the border to be closed. Most of these people are not cold-hearted monsters. They see a longer time horizon where nobody gains from this, except for a few groups that already have power and that are insidious. The real people that gain from this are the countries that created this in the first place. Their power structures gained by getting rid of cost to their structure, and also companies in this country that gain from cheap labor and being able to more easily manipulate people. The immigrants themselves also lose because they lose their home culture. They're displaced. Their perceived benefits of more income or a better place to live are a tragic price to pay for having to give up your history, your culture, your family tree, your homeland. It's the same as Native Americans who were resettled. Now, they were forced to be resettled. These migrants are being misled with a perceived easy crossing that draws more immigrants that would naturally come if it was hard to do, like what Teresa was talking about for her parents. That natural filter of true asylum need creates more danger, and that process that
30 seconds.
Okay, yeah, that process that Teresa's parents went through set them up for success. It's not cold-hearted, it's enabling for success. So thank you for that.
And our speaker is thanked. We will now take questions from, first let's go to Nancy in Minnesota.
Madam Chairman, does the speaker feel that certain U.S. policies, particularly in Central America, led to the conditions that created an exodus of their people?
To our speaker.
I do. I think that some of it was accidental, some is intentional, but very specifically, these bad conditions in many of the countries are tragically inflicted by things we do here.
And now to Brian. Brian, you want to?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute myself. Madam Chair, I was just curious what what thoughts the speaker has on what should be done with people who are currently here in the country illegally.
To our speaker?
Yeah, that I'm torn on. It would be ideal that there would be some resolution for their resettlement. I think that in the long run, they will suffer by losing their culture, losing their homeland. They may be able to create a life here, but unlike, Teresa's parents who came here intentionally to make a better life, some of these came here out of desperation, and they may not want to lose that culture. So I'm not sure what to do. I don't have a strong opinion on that. That's a more difficult question than the easier answer of more closing the current border. But thank you.
And now we will go to BX.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I'd like to ask the speaker. It's my experience that those groups most vocal about closing the border tend to be equally vocal about opposing foreign aid. I'm wondering if that's the speaker's perspective also.
Yeah, I think that's kind of hypocritical. I think that foreign aid would be beneficial as long as it wasn't just inefficient, just throwing money at it. I think if there was a structured way to help advance the plight of the people who would migrate out of desperation, that's a good use of the aid. If it's aid that's either dysfunctional or corrupt or used to kind of line the pockets of companies in this country that are benefiting from it, then that aid would not be beneficial, which is a lot of times what it is.
And with that, our speaker and our questioners are thanked. I see a lot of you have hands up. Apologies that I don't get to everyone. We don't want to keep anyone on the spot for too long, but I encourage you to sign up if you want to give a speech. So with that, we are moving on to our next speech in the negative. Do I have Helen Christians?
Yes, I'm here.
The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak today. I am also from Oregon, which I think is fun, and I am so listening to this, to these programs. I'm really enjoying this, and so thank you for listening to me for a bit. I'm against the resolution to close the border because the United States is a nation of people from all over the world who have bravely traveled to this land and brought with them their traditions, their music, their values to form a country that is more diverse than any other country in the world. And this diversity of people richly benefits our nation. David spoke about people wanting to keep their customs. These customs have all joined together to become the America that I know today. Some of these people that I speak of arrived long before Columbus, their ancestors, long before Columbus, and suffered greatly when Europeans laid claim to North America. And some of these people immigrated to escape persecution, like those on the Mayflower. Some of these people came against their will. They kidnapped from Africa and whose children labored as slaves for many generations. Some of these people came from China and Mexico and other European countries without legal documentation because before 1960, there were laws in place that excluded them from legally immigrating. And some of these people came because they were young and adventurous. And some of these people, like my family, came because they were hungry and they were poor, and they were welcomed by the US because they were cheap labor to work in the steel mills and the factories and the railroads and the farms. I've been to Ellis Island where my family entered the US, And there I saw historic anti-immigrant immigration posters and political cartoons that spread the word over centuries that the newest group, be them from Ireland or Asia or Italy, the newest group to arrive spread crime and disease and carried drugs and raped and were mentally deficient and depended on government welfare, and that these lazy drunkards expected a free ride at the expense of the true Americans. This is the same rhetoric that I continue to hear today about the dangerous caravans of illegals invading the southern border. I've lived in Oregon for nearly 40 years, and I've worked with some of these new immigrants at a free diabetes clinic in Hillsborough and during construction at my home. And I found them, these new immigrants, to be hardworking, family-centered people who love their children and who are making a positive contribution to our country. And they're adding to what is America. It's changing. America has changed since its beginning. According to the data, US facts, okay, in 2016, nearly 3 million people legally immigrated to the United States. Now, in 2022, there was only 1.5 million that legally immigrated. I agree with all of you. We need to update our root laws, but we need to keep the borders open to accept these wonderful people. Thank you.
Thank you to our speaker. I will now take questions. Let's go to Charlie Sutkamp. Charlie. Charlie, can you unmute yourself?
Okay, Madam Speaker. Helen referred to Ellis Island, and it's interesting. I wanted to know if she had seen the poster of the Irish person and the Chinese person gobbling up good U.S. SAM, because at the time there was such a fear that the Irish and the Chinese were going to just take America and overcome America. And also, if she's familiar with the Chinese Exclusion Act, we were so scared of the Chinese that we didn't allow anyone from China to enter the country, I think from 1898 to 1944.
Yeah, that's true. I've seen those things and visited, if any of you have a chance, in John Day, Oregon, there's a wonderful Chinese pharmacy. It's still intact. It's from 1942. And these were men that never became, even though they became millionaires, never became U.S. citizens because of the Chinese Exclusion Act. Those Exclusion Acts are no longer in place anymore, though.
No.
Thank you very much. We will now go to, let's have Amy.
For a question, right? Madam Chair, does the speaker feel like closing the border at the same time having a legal system to allow all these people from all over the world to come legally with papers, with identification, with background checks, are those things contradictory to one another?
No, not at all. I strongly believe, that there's only 1.5 million people that were able to legally immigrate into the United States in 2022. That's far too little. 3 million 2016. Why is it cut in half? It's because, for me, it's gotten so complicated and so difficult. And we need to have a simpler legal immigration to bring people in. Of course, I believe we've got to have a border policy, but it's gotten out of control.
And now for our final question for this speaker, let's go to Gary Blumen. Gary, you want to unmute yourself?
Hi there. I have a question, and it might be general to the speaker, and I think a lot of people on the call. We're discussing the bill that's in the Senate, and I'm pro-immigration, but I do see that there are some legitimate problems with it, and I feel like there's hypocrisy in the Republicans that have been vying for it, and I'm trying to look at it a big picture. They originally said
Can
no
we
support.
do a specific question for our speaker?
Yeah. Does she look at this like support to Ukraine that's in the bill and the resolution, the support for Israel, whether where we are with all of those, but I'm for this bill, and I'm also pro-immigration.
This is sounding like a speech. Can we?
I'm sorry. So it's just my question is, would she reconsider the bill because it allows for immigration, it allows for foreign policy money, and it does what she's saying. It would open up more people to get people in here legally. That's my question.
Thank you very much. For our speaker.
Yeah, and I do agree with you. I am very much in favor of a law that would allow for a better system and more people to go through the legal immigration. It's just so backlogged. 10 years is way too long to have to wait to get in here legally.
So the current resolution covers that with more attorneys and more judges.
Yes,
Isn't that what you're? So
I'm in favor of it.
Yep. Thank you.
I'm in favor.
Thank you, Gary. We're going to move on now. Thank you to our speakers and our questioners. With that, we go on to another speech in the affirmative. I am looking for Jim Robb from Numbers USA. Jim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate the opportunity to speak in the affirmative, and why I'm going to have to change the resolution a little bit to say close the border to illegal immigration. Our organization is in favor of legal immigration within limits, but so we want it to be modernized and made to work better for 21st century America. Illegal immigration is harmful to everyone in this country. In the last 3 years, we've had 5 to 6 million people who illegally settled in the United States. Some have just crossed the border when no one was looking. Those are the so-called gotaways. Others are people who came and crossed illegally, but then when encountered, made an asylum claim. And others who came and were in a part of a special group that the administration favors from certain countries or special groups, that they don't have a recourse in law to come, but they've been paroled into the country using a manipulation of an authority that was intended by Congress to give people who were on death's door access to the U.S. Medical system, and to waive other requirements. So that's so-called discretionary parole, but that's been used to allow hundreds of thousands of people at a time to waive them through. The current administration has turned what has been a big problem over the last 40 years, every year people coming illegally, into a crisis by overturning the former administration's policies, but without putting new policies in place that would attempt through other means to stem the flow. And as a result, people have gotten the message correctly that apparently that illegal immigration is not discouraged anymore in the United States. And when I was down in Eagle Pass, Texas in December, with my own eyes, I saw on one day about 1,000 people cross, and they just calmly lined up, and Border Patrol buses took them to a little tent city they have outside of town, and they're given a notice to appear, some as many as 10 years from now. So this is a problem. I just want to point out a few things very quickly. Fentanyl overdose deaths is the leading cause of death for Americans 18 to 49. We know that most illegal aliens come here to work. They're not criminals, but besides their immigration law breaking. But the problem is the Border Patrol and authorities are so busy taking care of these masses of people that are coming across. And I mean, it is masses that the other people are able to more easily slip through with the drugs. And it's a big, big problem. In fact,
you have 30 seconds, please.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Wow. You warned me. We'd go fast. And then, of course, Mayor Adams of New York City says that illegal immigration is destroying his city, and they're having to cut hundreds of millions from their budgets because people are coming in and have not been planned for, have not been welcome to the country. They've not been vetted in any way. They have no skills. They have no language, and so they have to have a transition. And a sanctuary city like New York has to accommodate them. So this is a problem. And then I also want to just mention that all the people who come, if they do succeed in getting work, illegally or not, sometimes people who were getting American style wages lose out, and because people are willing to work for almost nothing because they need some job. And so
can you bring it to a close?
Yeah, people without higher education have not gotten a raise in this country in decades because the labor pool is too loose. We need to stop illegal immigration. It harms the country, harms Americans.
Thank you very much to our speaker. We will now take questions. I am looking for, let's see, Malini, your question for the speaker.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thanks. Do I ask you, Madam Chair?
Please direct your question to me.
Okay, Madam Chair. So I wanted to ask the speaker if he would support an increase in legal immigration to the country. He says he doesn't like illegal immigration, but currently our legal immigration system is very restricted unless you have a very close family member who's American citizen, or you're in a very narrow category of very highly skilled individuals, such as you have a PhD, or you come from a war-torn country, so you can claim asylum or refugee status. There are very few other pathways to get to this country. According,
can you bring it to a specific question?
So my question is, the speaker has mentioned several times that he's against illegal immigration. He's mentioned people pouring in the border. You can't even tell who's bringing drugs, etc. Obviously, we'd have a much more organized system at the border. There'd be much fewer people coming to the border if we had expanded our legal immigration system, whereby people who are not seeking asylum, but seeking economic benefits to increase their opportunities in this country.
Question for the speaker.
So my question is, would he support increased legal immigration for people who want to come and work in this country? Because currently there's very few legal pathways for this to happen.
Thank you. For our speaker.
Yeah, so no, I don't think the number should go up. The immigration is the big driver of population growth in the U.S. We have more than doubled the population in my lifetime. We are on schedule to gain several hundred million more people by the end of this century at our current pace. We have the majority of all legal immigrants in the world that come to this country. Of the whole world, the majority of legal immigrants come to one country, this country. We have a lot of immigrants. Million, 2 million a year doesn't seem like much. That's a lot of people. But I agree that they're not distributed very wisely. We've got laws that were made decades ago, and we should tune it up to make it, to modernize it for the needs of America today.
Thank you very much. And now we will take a question from Ed Ames.
Yes, thank you. I actually have two questions for the speaker that came up.
Keep them
One
short.
is,
Too.
yeah, which Trump policies did Biden overturn other than the family separation policy that you believe are responsible for increased illegal immigration? That's the first question. And per the stats, 2021, 86% of the fentanyl trafficking convictions were US citizens. So how does the extra 14%, assuming that that is happening through people smuggling it across the border who are not US citizens, how does that help as opposed to dealing with the 86% who are US citizens who are inflicting this on us?
Right. Obviously, American citizens are selling the drugs at the final to actual people hooked on the drug. Excuse me.
Trafficking as in bringing into the country. Sorry.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, drug trafficking is controlled by the Mexican cartels, and and foreign nationals are used for the trafficking. We won't have enough time to debate that, but I think it's yeah, it's the drugs are coming from Mexico. They're brought by foreign nationals into this country, and I'm not suggesting that the illegal immigrant population is really the carrier of it, but it makes it so easy for the others. And the second question, the remain in Mexico policy you didn't mention. On the first day he was in office, Biden abrogated the agreement with Mexico. It was an agreement with Mexico, by the way, it's not foisted on Mexico. We had an agreement so that people who were waiting to see if their asylum cases would get through the courts, and they would remain in Mexico in the meantime. And that policy was overturned, and now all those people come directly into the U.S. at much, much higher volume, because now they find out they can come directly into the U.S. and stay.
Okay. Thank you very much for the answer and the question. I'll take one more question from Stephen Yeager.
Yes, this is Steve Yeager from Florida. Madam Chair, would the speaker advocate that there be limits on the number of migrants that can enter the U.S. seeking asylum? If so, what should that number be, and how should the number be determined?
It's a great question. I think first off, the first thing remedy needs to be that when people apply for asylum, there needs to be a much more realistic and modern test to get to the next stage. Right now, it's a very low bar to get that court hearing, which is what people are seeking, because very often the court hearings are being set for 10 years in the future. Now, there's 2031 is one of the dates I saw just recently with my own eyes. And so we need to change the policy to make it, as the House bill HR 2, which we support, would have it, that it's more likely than not that a court would grant this person asylum. That should be the test. It would cut down on this. And then second, people should apply from a safe third country rather than coming to the United States, because the great majority of people actually are economic migrants, and it's fraudulent. And this problem is being faced by every advanced country in the world right now. It's not just a U.S. thing. It's not just about U.S. politics. It's about treaties made after the Second World War to try to give safe havens for people who've truly been persecuted at the threat of death in their home countries, would have a place to go in the last resort. And it so happens that it's been gained.
Thank you so much. And so that is 3 questions. So thank you very much to our speaker and to our questioners. And we will now move on to a speech in the negative. I am looking for Brian. Brian.
Hello. Can you hear me, Madam Chair?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So I sort of have a few slightly meandering points that I would just kind of, and I think also a bit more of a emotional appeal than yeah, anyway, I've given a lot of thought to this issue, and one thing that I come back to over and over again is that were I born in El Salvador, I would be an illegal migrant. You know, I would not have, I would have been growing up in the murder capital of the world. I would have had essentially no economic opportunities, and I would have no option to immigrate really to any other country. My future would be, joining a gang, or dying in poverty. And if I to go somewhere where I could maybe, you know, improve my life or improve the life of my children or family, I would 100% do it. And it seems difficult for me to say to those people then who are trying to do that, sorry, but you have to live the lot that you pulled, by being born somewhere not quite as wonderful as the United States. My second point is, and I know is something that we a lot of the time talk about illegal immigration as a new issue. And I remember when I was probably, boy, maybe 15 years old, and I was watching movies on like Turner Classic or something late at night. A movie came up from 1949 about illegal immigration and smuggling people across the border. It was about a American and Mexican, uh, immigration agents who were trying to solve the problem. Anyway, 1949 is a long time ago, and it was big enough for a Hollywood movie back then. It surprises me that we haven't figured out yet that the reason people are coming here is because American corporations and companies can pay them lower wages. I grew up in Nebraska, and there were several instances where meatpacking plants would be raided. Lots of people would be rounded up and deported. There were no repercussions for, these companies that were hiring these workers. No one, to my knowledge, went to jail. Maybe they got a fine, but if you know, if we keep hiring them, they're going to keep coming. I just wonder why we get so much talk about closing the border when we don't talk about, consequences for Americans who are encouraging people to come across incredibly dangerous journeys so that they can be paid wages that are lower than what Americans are willing to pay or work for. Sorry.
Okay, thank you to our speaker. Now going to questions. Let's go to A.L. Faustino. Can you want to unmute yourself? Yeah.
I thought this person was, Madam Speaker, my question is a very practical one. How exactly would you close the border?
A simple question for our speaker.
Yeah, I have no idea how you would really close the border. It's rather long. There are places where it is incredibly mountainous, and difficult to surveil. I mean, people are smart. If we close the border in a particular river crossing in Texas, eventually they're going to figure out that there's a different, place in Arizona where they can sneak across. I mean, if we build a wall, you can build a tunnel. If you build a wall, you can build a ladder. Short of constant surveillance with just armies of border agents, I don't know how you could secure the border. I mean, maybe this is a bit overdramatic, but the when I think of a secure border, I think of like North and South Korea or the Berlin Wall, like guards every 100 yards and landmines. Like I don't know how you secure that long of an area.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I will take one more question, this one from Gary Blumen. Gary, you're on mute.
Yeah. Does the speaker know about surveillance and infrared? I've heard there's ways to secure the border. And again, I'm kind of in the middle. I'm for some wall where needed, and then we could go to tech. And can't tech really help a lot with infrared searches and just keeping track of way out areas that don't need a wall? That's my question.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question, and I'm by no means an expert, but I am an engineer. I do know a little bit about the tech, and you're first of all, you're not wrong in that you can detect people very well. I still don't see how it doesn't come down to a manpower problem though, because even if I can see, every individual person, I need somebody to go out there and physically stop them. I mean, unless you're wanting to like arm drones and have them, shoot at people, I without a large number of agents, even if you can see them and track them, you do still have to go intercept them. So I don't feel like technology is quite the answer, as far as I have thought about it. But I certainly could be wrong.
And with that, our speaker and our questioners are thanked. We will now take a speech in the affirmative. I'm looking for Jack Reneo from the North Carolina Forward Party, our sponsoring organization. Jack?
Hello, Madam Chair. Thank you for having me here. So I'm a Wall Street guy. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina right now. I like to change things up a little bit because we've been speaking pretty much, and talked about a lot of the points that need to be touched. What I like to say is that, I come from an immigrant family, grew up in New York City. My wife is an immigrant. I'm very pro-immigrant. I'm very pro-business. And I think, and I follow this issue very closely because it boggles me that we've had this discussion in this country for 30 years. I mean, and no other country has this problem at the border. No other country is incentivizing immigrants to bum rush the border, come over and reward them with paperwork, driver's licenses, and all these things. I think in our spirit of being humane, we are actually incentivizing and inviting caravans of people, and we know what happens when they plunge into these rivers and stuff. So what I'm thinking, what I like to say, I forgot to put my timer on here. I'm sorry, I'm doing it now. But what I like to try to be brief and say, look, this is not complicated, guys. This is not complicated. The amount of that we should have coming across the border illegally is zero. I remember from Cuba, like we used to have a problem with people on floats and inflatables coming over. And we realized how dangerous, how many people were dying. And we felt terrible for them. We said, hey, we will not accept anybody who come down through that route. And we tried other means. I think what we need to do is as voters, as concerned human beings, understand why people are coming. We have to open up the front door through immigration, understand border control and immigration are two different issues, completely different issues. We should address the border as just that. It's a security issue, but we have enemies of state who are promising and to infiltrate and do the country harm. We caught 200 terrorists and Hezbollahs operating on our border. We cannot have anyone. We can't afford anyone to come through. Only 19 terrorists did what they did on 9/11. I want people to remember that. And in terms of immigration, businesses, we have a shortage here of welders, truck drivers, all sorts of things. We need to open up that legal route into what our economy can accommodate and take as many as we can. This is simple stuff. I sit back and wonder how are we here pit against each other and conflating the two? And I think the only bad guys here are really the politicians who clearly don't want to fix this, can't fix it, maybe because they don't want to. They're making tons of money fundraising off of it and using it strategically and politically. And I think a lot of people are suffering. Businesses are suffering with worker shortages, and the people, we all know the horror stories happening at the border. We shouldn't tolerate that. As voters, as Americans, as human beings, we have an obligation to try to make sure our politicians, our leaders in this country do the right thing for us as a country and for the immigrants. And I'll stop there and take some questions.
Thank you very much, Jack. Okay, let's see. Let's go to Joan Meyerhoff. Joan, there you go.
My question for you, Jack, is what are your ideas about what needs to happen to allow for more legal immigration? I heard someone say we need funds for more judges and staff to review requests. Tell me all about what you think is required to make for more legal immigration.
That's a great question. I appreciate that. I think the answer is very easy. I don't know why, but to me, everything is simple. The businesses there's a worker shortage for welders, for truck drivers, all these things. Okay. The problem we have with immigration is that it's uncoordinated. They're being dumped on states that are overwhelmed and have broken welfare nets that are stretched to beyond repair. And instead, you have companies who are looking to pay. People could come into this through the front door and have a job, have means to make a living, and and if there's millions of job shortages, and there's more openings than there are candidates trying to fill them, and there's shortages here. So businesses are suffering. We should have, the businesses and the economy should dictate how many people we bring in. As many people that can have that job and land there, be productive on day one, is not a burden to the school boards and to the welfare programs. They actually instantly contribute to the businesses, contribute to the community, contribute in every way. This is simple stuff. And the economy should dictate how many we bring in, and we need to streamline that process for everybody's sake.
Okay, let's go to Arlita Harris for a question.
Thank you. Madam Chairman, I commend the speaker for what he just said. I work with immigration, legal immigration, and it is so frustrating to have someone who entered illegally want to be on a path to citizenship or want to get a legal birth or a work permit or even a driver's license in my state. And it just cannot be done. If you get an illegal entry, you are forever illegal. And somehow that isn't talked about enough.
This sounds like an excellent speech, but do you have a question for our speaker?
I do. My question is, how can we get this closing of the border discussion changed to an immigration reform so our laws can be reformed to allow more people to enter legally?
Oh my gosh, that is my favorite question. So I would say, thank you so much for asking that. And the answer literally is because it's the same question that I had. And the answer is what is looking at you in the audience. We have 100, 200 people here. We have groups like Braver Angels trying to get people talking, voters, to get them informed and talking and holding their elected officials accountable. I think it all starts by ending the demonization, ending the games. There's a lot of games being played, unnecessary. You look at this last bill that they just put forward. There's tons of different sets of rules based on daily averages. And look, these are games, and there's loopholes everywhere. The solutions should be a lot simpler. If we have 0 people allowed coming through the border, like Florida, stop taking in Cubans stop coming. And then an enormous amount of resources and personnel could be reallocated to the front door, to where we have all these programs where businesses have these needs, meet those needs with migrants and settle them where they're needed, in the places that they're needed, in jobs that they're needed. And that happens when people care. They come to a meeting like this on a Thursday night. You could be anywhere, but you're here. So it starts with everyone here, and I want to commend everybody who's in this audience. That's where it starts. And then, to care about each other as a human race, to care about each other as Americans, and to get informed, and then to take some steps. And it starts with calling your local representatives and leaving messages and say, look, we have to stop conflating these 2 issues. These are 2 separate issues. This is all political gamemanship. We got people's lives on the line here. People are suffering. Businesses are suffering, and it's costing this country a fortune, which we can no longer afford.
Thank you, Jack. We will go ahead on now to our next speaker in the negative. Do we have actually Joan Meyerhoff, who just gave a speech? Would you like to be our next negative speaker? Or sorry, I just asked a question.
Yes, I would be happy to share my experience in a speech. I'm a retired social worker, and I worked with elders and people with disabilities. And in my own experience, and I have probably been in most of the care facilities in my county. And in my experience, we have a shortage of caregivers that is affecting the quality of life for elders and people with disabilities. And right now, the care is primarily given by people who are immigrants. And in my experience so far, I have found the quality of care among these people running adult care homes, as well as being staff in nursing homes and assisted living facilities, to be exceptionally high. I feel as though the culture of places like Mexico and Africa is where I am, and also from Romania. That's what I'm mostly familiar with. Those cultures are more, they are more familiar with taking care of old and sick and disabled people. They're used to integrating them into life, and they are very kind. And we have a severe shortage of caregivers, which is affecting the care of people in care facilities. And I think we need to figure out how to allow more immigrant workers into this country legally.
Thank you to our speaker. So now, do we have questions for our speaker? Anyone? I see Joan still has her hand up, but we'll go, Gary.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, no. My question would be, does she have, and a lot of people use stats. I don't think they're always great. Everybody uses them to do their arguments, and I try and look at it more open. But so your experience with the workers, then are you for processing them, even if they're illegal, here working, get them paying Social Security, etc., and get them on the books? And doesn't you or anybody have ideas how to do that?
Well, just what my own personal answer is that it would be better if we had a path for more immigrants to get into this country more easily, legally, because it's very hard on them to do it illegally. It's dangerous. And once they get here, it's no bed of roses. So ideally, there would be a wider path to immigration for people.
I agree with you. I'm all for more feet on the ground helping process, and judges, attorneys.
Thank you. And now I would like to go to Debbie Silverman.
we seem to have a consensus among most of the speakers and the questioners that we agree to a need for legal immigrants. And there are areas of need. I'd like to know what the speaker thinks, and I'd like to refer to the earlier speaker too, Jack. What about, instead of the government who screwed this whole thing up so badly, what about corporations? It might be caregiving corporations. It might be businesses that need welders or animal care, whatever. What about them sponsoring immigrants, and not only sponsoring them to bring them in for housing, but to give them the training?
To our speaker?
Well, I think that the companies that I've worked with that run care facilities do hire the workers. But to your broader question, I think that's a very creative idea. And Jack, you probably have more to say about that than I do.
I would just add,
So we're going to stick with just the speaker for now. Scott,
Okay. I think I don't have more to say about that. It's a very creative thought that you have, Debbie.
All right. And with that, our speaker and our questioners are thanked. Before we move on to our next speech in the affirmative, we're going to take a little break. Consider this the 7th inning stretch, about 2 minutes, during which I would like to invite Jim Robb and Jack Reneo, who you've heard from tonight, the representatives tonight's sponsoring organizations, to take 30 to 60 seconds, just real quick, introduce your organization to our audience and tell us, why are you partnering with Braver Angels tonight? Jim, let's go first to Numbers USA.
Numbers USA is a 27-year-old organization that has a broad national membership. It's free to join. You go to numbersusa.com and we'll tell you all about it. What we're trying to do is to stop illegal immigration and to modernize and rationalize legal immigration to work better for Americans for America in the 21st century. Welcome all of you to come and take a look at what we have to offer. We give you ways to contact Congress and give your opinions and we can educate you about bills in front of Congress, like the things you've been hearing about in the last couple of weeks.
And why are you here tonight at the Braver Angels debate?
I love Braver Angels. I'm quite involved with Braver Angels. I was at the convention last summer and just fell in love with the organization. And everything in Washington is, neither party will give the other a win, even if they agree. And so I'm frustrated with that, and with the general tenor and the rancor of the debate. So I find it refreshing that Braver Angels looks for people not to give up their ideas, opinions, and convictions, but to argue more effectively and more respectfully.
Thank you so much, Jim. And now, Jack, you want to introduce the North Carolina Forward Party to us?
Yes, but I'm going to start with why I'm Braver Angels. And I think because I have to say, I was a little concerned and felt down when I see all these problems and all the bickering and the divisiveness, and love this country for all the great things we did in history. Sure, we have our sins, but we did some amazing things here. And then, when I felt a little down, I got this email from Braver Angels, jumped in, met wonderful people, caring people, and realized I had no idea that there were groups like this where hundreds, if not thousands, are coming together who care and want to make things a better improvement in our own country and help others in the process. So that then got me engaged into politics, and I found the Forward Party, which is a brand new organization. And the Forward Party, for those who don't know, we are starting a brand new party in this country, coast to coast, all 50 states, rising up right now. The point of this party is to restore trust in government. And by doing that, we're going to do that by fixing the system, focusing on the electoral reforms, getting fair elections, gerrymandering, and all these things that prevent politics, that look at the border as a perfect example, that prevent two people from sitting down in good faith to solve things. So we're trying to fix the system so that we can fix the problems. And our party is dedicated to fixing the system and putting the power in the voter to decide whether the answer is to the right or to the left or in the center on any particular issue. It should be in the voters' hands, and our job is to fix the system so the voters get their voice back.
Thanks so much, Jack. Thank you to both of our partner organizations for being here tonight. I have one last announcement for all of you. I would like to invite you to join us for our next debate in 3 weeks, Thursday, February 29th, leap year, when the resolution will be resolved, your vote doesn't count. Think about that. Look out for your Eventbrite. We'll have the link for you tonight so you can sign right up for that. Now, let us return to the debate floor, where I am looking for a speech in the affirmative. Let us go to Liza. Liza, are you out there?
Yeah, hi, I'm Liza, and I was a little nervous to speak because I work for a migrant organization, but I am in the affirmative. But hearing others, Jack and Jim, helps me feel courageous that it's not this like compassionate person or non-compassionate person. I've been working with migrants since March. And just in the time I've been working, our small rural northern state has had exponential arrival of illegal folks who cross the border illegally. I feel really conflicted because us helping some of these families, they invite every cousin and relative that they have, but we're helping these families, so they're doing okay. But we can't help all their relatives, and their relatives are just falling. Their kids, I've seen second graders who have to stay home from school to watch 2- and 3-year-olds in the household while the adults are out working. Parents are going through such trauma from the journey that they're watching children, but kids are wandering out of their sight. We had a 3-year-old along the side of a busy road. There are unsafe conditions, especially for the children. And me and the volunteers in our organization secretly say to each other, they need to close the border. We are so for the diversity and the rich gifts that these people are bringing to our community, but it's not a benevolent thing to welcome people into a place that is unsafe. There's other countries like Canada who have quotas. My parents traveled to New Zealand and they said there's this great path to citizenship. You're really rewarded for staying on a good path. And like I said, the work, there's so many other models, and we just need to pause. We need to pause and get caught up with the huge influx. Every month we are breaking records from the month before of people just pouring over the border. And in Vermont, people are arriving and they're living in their car homeless, which is dangerous this time of year. There is no housing for even Vermonters, and they're in the homeless shelters. So we have kids living in cars, homeless and alone at home. Our system is just not prepared to take on the numbers, and we just need to pause and catch up.
Thank you to our speaker. Now, do we have any questions? Looking for questions for our speaker. Adyed.
Yeah, my question is, the issue is money. We need money for supporting all the immigrants, whether legal or undocumented or illegal. There's all kinds of categories. My view is we support our minorities with having student loan. Why don't the government create what I call immigration loan, that the government give the immigrant money as a loan, and when they establish themselves financially, they return the money and we can bring more immigrants. I think this will work very nice. Thank you.
Was that a question?
Yeah, is there a specific question?
My question to you, have you considered getting to immigrants like something like student loan, immigrant loan? And this will solve the issue of financial burden on the people. Thank you.
Well, what we have found is just giving money does not help because their relatives back home are in really dire situations, and that money just gets sent directly wired to home, and they stay in a desperate situation here is what we found. We found it better to help them find housing, help them find work, but just giving money is not a solution is what we have found.
And now let's go to Teresa.
Madam Speaker, relative to the question asked and to your speaker, Denver has tried, Colorado has tried giving money to their homeless population. So prior to the migrants arriving onslaught in late 2022, Colorado has seen a huge influx of homelessness. And so we've tried giving money, and it has not been effective at all. And the Colorado taxpayers.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, don't bother Vermont trying that because Colorado's trying it and it hasn't worked. So it's not really a question, I guess. It's just like we've done it.
Would our speaker care to respond?
Yeah, I mean, what people have said, I agree. They want to work legally. We just need to fix the system. There's lots of employers in Vermont who want to employ them, and they have to wait all these years to get official employment status. One thing I think is interesting is that Cesar Chavez of the farm worker movement, he was against illegal immigration because you can't get a fair wage for your farm workers if there is an infinite number of more desperate people streaming across the border.
And with that, our speaker and our questioners are thanked. We are now, as we approach the last segment of our debate, the last 15 minutes, we're going to go to 2-minute speeches and one question, try to keep it short, maybe we'll do 2. But we're looking now for a speech in the negative. Do we have Kirk J out there? Kirk.
Yes, you do, if my phone works, which I think it does.
2 minutes for you.
So I'm not going to say that every immigrant is great or that diversity, blah, blah, blah. But I think on net average, if you were to weigh the cost and benefits, I say this country is better off being a country of immigrants. And what I see constantly are permanent solutions proposed for things that are essentially temporary, right? Like the asylum process is being run by an incompetent administration. Okay, sure. But like you look at this new border deal and their solution is just essentially get rid of asylum forever. I mean, these are things I think that damage the base character of our country on a long-term basis. And I understand all the things people say about the communities getting influx of people. It's really hard. But like take the border deal. That thing spends $100 billion blowing up little kids across the globe, and somehow they can't find enough money to make sure that people have a place to wait for asylum, to make sure that cities don't have to cut their budgets and make these really hard decisions. What I really see is that I think closing the border is in a lot of ways an overreaction. If the people in charge are incompetent and are suggesting to get rid of, I think, foundational aspects of our country that make it better, then the solution isn't to get rid of those foundational aspects, it's to get rid of the incompetent people. And I'd like to go very fast because I know there's a time limit, so I will just open that up for questions.
Thank you so much to our speaker. Do we have questions for the speaker? Rick.
Yeah, let's see, Madam Chair, would you ask the speaker, I'd like to get his opinion on, is it a matter of incompetence or is it a matter of our laws need to change and we need to set some sort of quotas so our administrative capabilities can handle the influx of people coming seeking asylum and stuff like that? Because as far as I can tell, we're just overwhelmed with the numbers and we don't have it. I don't know if it's incompetence, but certainly you have to provide the tools and you have to have some standards. How many people you let in, how many people you let.
So the question?
Yeah, the question is.
I mean,
he's got it. Yeah. Go ahead.
I mean, I think a lot of people bring up things like fixing the legal immigration system, et cetera, et cetera. I know for the asylum issue, I mean, it's actually pretty hard to get asylum in this country. I think people just are trying to get into that like court system. And we didn't have this every year. I mean, this started a few years ago. I mean, it's not like a permanent problem. I mean, it comes and goes. But I think really it's a mix of lack of confidence and people not picking long-term solutions. I think it's really both.
Okay. And with that, our speaker and our questioner are thanked. We will now go to Amy. Amy, are you out there with a speech in the affirmative? Amy Teutenberg?
I am. Just give me 1 second.
All right, and we'll give you 2 minutes. Are we ready?
And the reason that I have been working in the community for the past 3 years in education, social services, and healthcare, and I would say it is not compassionate to allow people to come here as basically second-class citizens. They do not have rights. Where I live, 100 years ago, people died protesting for the 40-hour work week. And because companies can hire people illegally, they do not have to respect our labor laws. People are afraid of complaining about unsafe working conditions. I've seen horrific permanent injuries and disabilities to people injured in some of the most dangerous jobs that immigrants work. And either a company needs to be required to sponsor someone for a visa, give them their rights, pay them minimum wage, or they do not come here. And it lowers the standards for everyone. I worked in a restaurant where I had to also accept money under the table if I wanted to work there. And fortunately, I got my degree, I went on to college and didn't have to worry about it. But the other people, and this has put, the white working class and other races against each other who did not have those opportunities to advance in competition. And that's why a lot of them left the Democratic Party. And it's wrong to be putting all these people in competition and allowing people to work in unsafe conditions. You either close the border or you give everyone work visas so they have rights.
Thank you to our speaker. Brian, do you have a question?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I was just curious, because this is something I've been thinking about, what the speaker would think should happen or what punishment or ramifications there should be for companies that do hire illegally.
I mean, huge fines, shut them down. I mean, we have companies that are hiring children. And if you're not checking that, there are companies, they know that and they don't care. I mean, huge fines or be shut down or even jail time for some. Some of them have exploited people for a long time. And there are many instances of labor trafficking where people are actually stuck on farms in rural areas, not allowed to leave. I think if because they owe their employer $15,000 in debt for a smuggler that brought them here through an employer. I think there should be jail time for something like that.
And now we will move on to try to get as many speeches in. Well, I see a lot of hands, so I will take one more question from Anat. Please try to keep it brief.
Madam Chair, I'm wondering if the speaker considers the situation described of an employer somehow arranging for someone to be stuck on a rural farm, owing 15 grand to an employer. If the speaker considers this some form of indentured servitude.
Yes, absolutely. I consider that to almost be the equivalent to slavery. And by allowing people to come here illegally, I know that means some people will not be able to come here. But is this really what we want in this country? Because as long as people keep coming here legally, this is what people can do under the radar, under the table, behind the scenes, because the people are too afraid to complain. They have no rights. They have no one to go to.
With that, our speaker and our questioners are thanked. We will now go to, if we can do this fast, we will do one more speech, 2 more speeches in the negative and 1 more in the affirmative, but we're going to keep them really short. Do we have Nancy Piper Jankovic up for a speech in the negative?
Hi there. I'm from Wisconsin, and this has been really good for me to hear tonight. I've really learned a lot. What prompts me to want to speak is that my family has an immigrant family affiliated with us, and we follow this issue really carefully. They have lived here for over 20 years. They both of the parents are college educated. She is a teacher for our public school system. She's a Spanish teacher. She comes from Colombia and he is from Zimbabwe. And these 2 people, married couple who own a home, and she works for our public school system. They've gone through immigration through the public school system. They still do not have green cards. And what that means for them is they can't go home. They've had family members die. They can't leave the country because they don't have green cards. And they have 2 children who are in high school now, who are citizens. So that, I think people don't understand sometimes how messed up our immigration system is. The real irony is she has, the wife has a sister who also lives here in Wisconsin, and the sister married an American and she's already a US citizen. But apparently we don't want people on the path to citizenship if they're from Colombia, if one's from Colombia and one's from Zimbabwe, which is an African country. So that was a point I wanted to make. And then the other point is,
Nancy, we are going to have to close. Can you just have one last sentence to finish up?
I just want to tell you what a wonderful book about the border. It's written by Alejandra Oliva. It does a fabulous job explaining what goes on at the border. If you don't understand it, you'll love the book.
Thank you, Nancy. Thank you to our speaker. I'm looking for 1 question for our speaker. Does anyone have a question? Seeing none and wanting to move on. Well, okay. Dorothy, a very short question, if you please, so we can get more speeches in.
Okay, I just wanted to see the title of the book again.
Oh, to our speaker, will you hold the book up for us?
Rivermouth, and then it has a big long thing with it. It's really, really good. The woman who wrote it is a young writer. She's bilingual. She grew up in the US, but her parents are from Mexico.
And with that, our speaker is thanked. I am now looking for Alana Mirror.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I actually don't have a speech. I have a question that I would like to ask to anyone who has spoken tonight about creating new pathways of legal immigration. And the question that I have to ask for anyone who'd like to answer this is, how do we consider concerns and challenges related to class, such as literacy, if we're wanting to create an equitable path to legal immigration? How do we do so for folks who, for example, aren't literate or don't have the means to work the system? That's my question.
Well, we will take that as a thought-provoking speech, and then I will take 1 to 2. Well, I'm looking for one question. So we'll say the question could be an answer. Does anyone wish to answer this speech? Charlie.
I don't have an answer for her specific question. All I can tell you is that 2 Republican governors, I thought was very interesting, said they are trying to allow states to have the power to immigrate, to issue their own immigration visas, which I think would answer a lot of Jack's questions too about opening up the system, giving the states the power to bring in people right into their state and allow them to work.
Does our speaker who posed a question wish to answer this this question or address this?
Nope, I'd love to hear from anyone else who wants to answer my question. Thank you.
Okay, well, we have to fit in one more speech tonight, so I'm going to go to our final speech in the negative. Before we do our closing ritual, please stick around for that. It is possibly the most important part of our evening. But for our final speech, do we have Dennis Lauver in the negative? Dennis.
Yep. Boy, there's the pressure. Okay. So
1 minute, 30 seconds for you.
In the late 1980s, I left Washington, D.C., turned down 6 jobs. I went to come back to Iowa, Nebraska, and Kansas, spent 25 years in the Chamber of Commerce business. Labor availability is the biggest impediment to rural economic development. Traditionally, 90% of all capital investment in America occurred in only 15 counties. That's jumped to 96.7%. I was responsible for, sad to say, the last meaningful change in immigration law in this country, 1999, when they updated immigration law relative to international adoptions. Both of our sons were internationally adopted. I had a conversation with my boss from the 80s, Senator Grassley, who's active in the Judiciary Committee. This past July, I met with Judiciary Committee staff in Washington specifically about immigration law. Today, somebody applied to come into the United States, and of the 107 pages that are used to review whether or not they're there, for example, one of those questions, were you an active member of the Nazi Party between March 23rd, 1933 and May 5th in 1945? And when I made the point that even if the answer was yes, how old is a person that would have been active in the Nazi Party in May of 1945? I got yelled at and treated like I was some sort of a rabble rouser for how dare I suggest that it's time to update some of those aspects of immigration law.
Dennis, can you bring it to a close here?
So, we have the largest, I would say we've got the largest population, or the lowest population density in the world. We have very low population growth. We need bodies. There are certain things that can be done to meaningfully help rural America, especially, but people on both ends of the spectrum don't really want to solve the problem. And especially the urban areas realize the rural area needs people, and they're not interested in doing that. And I'm out of time to talk more.
Thank you so much for that short speech to close us out.